Hi everyone, my name is Joshua Barzell, and I'd like to welcome you to the Get Rich DFS NASCAR podcast. Today we'll be going over the Daytona 500, and it's going to be me and my partner, Virgil Jeffries. Virgil, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, I'm Virgil Jeffries. This is our first ever official podcast, so go easy on us. But to introduce ourselves, I think we should start with a nice icebreaker question. And the people have been asking, Josh, favorite driver and why? Go.
So, if I'm being honest, my favorite driver used to be Kyle Larson, but
Boo.
exactly. I can't just pick a winner. I can't be a bandwagon fan. So that's led me to change up my pick a little bit. I'm going with Ross Chastain. I mean, how can you not love a driver who literally to make to the next round of the playoffs drove his car into a wall full speed? I mean,
I
I don't think
forgot he did that. I
yeah,
forgot he did that.
I don't think there's a more entertaining driver in NASCAR right now than Ross. So that's gonna be me. And I'm gonna have to reverberate your question to you. I mean, you remember though, you got to use current drivers. Can't say no Kurt Busch in here.
Yeah, I know. I've been a big fan of Kurt Busch in the past. Not when he was like a screaming crybaby in 2004, but more coming into his later years when he kind of mellowed out. But no, I think I've switched, and I am now going to go with the other Trackhouse driver. Well, I guess there's three now, but I'm going to go with Daniel Suarez. There's something about the Los Migos, man. There's something about the charm. There's nothing better than seeing Daniel Suarez in winning lane. I don't think I've ever seen more like hype when a driver wins. I mean, come on. I mean, look at Atlanta. Let's not forget he won like the closest NASCAR race of all time.
No, you're true. That's right. That's right. It was it was just like watching the ending of the first race in the Cars movie.
Quite literally. And I actually remember I saw like a TikTok he put out on the Trackhouse team where he was like explaining to Ross Chastain how he won. He just started like licking like I don't know what the hell he was licking. It was like a I don't know, it's like popsicle or something, but it was such a weird TikTok.
I mean, that's Daniel Suarez for you. At least he has a personality, unlike half the drivers in today's field.
That's true. That's true. And speaking of which, getting to today's field and general strategy on how to bet on these lines and on these races. It's because these races are very different to what we will traditionally be talking about. The fact that they're restrictor plate racing. Would you like to explain that?
Yeah. So today we're talking about the Daytona 500, which is one of a few restrictor plate races throughout the year, such as Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta. So for these races, what we're gonna want to do is we have to take the strategy of stacking from the back, because in here you can just have people flying up and down, going left and right. At the end of the day, all you want your driver to avoid the wrecks. I mean, trust me, it does not matter if they start from the back or the front. They can get anywhere they want. I mean, we saw that happen in the dual race on Thursday night with Eric Jones. He made a third lane and he just hammered it because everyone's so busy saving gas. He was able to put his foot down, got right to the front of the pack.
And for all those reasons too, you're not going to want any like dominators in this race because if you're new to NASCAR sports betting on DK or FanDuel, drivers accrue points for either gaining position or for leading laps and having the fastest laps. So at like certain tracks, you know who's going to be able to like lead like 100 laps maybe, and they're going to get a lot of points even if they don't finish first place. But here, I mean, it's really split because you have two lines racing next to each other pretty much all the time, trading laps back and forth, and the added fact that nobody wants to be in first place because if you're in first place, you're just losing gas and you're putting unnecessary stress on the car. So for all that reasons and the wrecks, we're gonna definitely stick to the back of the pack, and we're gonna pick drivers that we will probably rarely ever pick again in the next coming podcasts.
I have to agree with you there. So if we're gonna start getting into the breakdown of this slate a little bit, we sorted these drivers from starting position first to 41st. We have that special 41st driver this year, Elio Castrovones. He has a special NASCAR All-Star driver exemption. Some people aren't liking that too much, but you know what? I can't complain. It's giving us a 41 driver field in the Daytona 500. I don't think it can get much better than that. So,
Yeah, and that's completely past regulation too. I don't even, I think there wasn't there a rule cap on it. So kind of strange to have 41 drivers.
Yeah, no, they pulled off that cap and they said, hey, you know what? He's an all-star driver. You got to get him in this race. And they're actually going to be doing this going forward. So I think that'll be interesting to see, especially at all of our super speedway races we have coming up.
Cool. All right,
So,
so who is your number one pick on the slate? And by number one, I mean who do you think everyone's going to flock to?
so if I think if we're looking at chalk for today's race, I really, really don't think you can get too much higher ownership today than our friend Brad Keselowski down here. He's
Yeah.
for years he's been one of the best restrictor plate racers we have in the sport. You know, he's old, he's not too aggressive, he likes to stay in a line. The only thing that he has going against him is that he might be a little bit too old to handle the car, especially when it gets intense. But I really don't see Brad having any problems today. He knows how to get through the
No,
field. He knows how to avoid wrecks.
I don't think Brad's gonna have it. I think Brad is gonna have absolutely the top ownership. Period. And it's probably in like most contests, it's probably gonna be like 60% or up. maybe 50%. I don't know what like you'd be thinking on that, but I mean, even at the dual race, had what was it, Chris Buescher not made that mistake and threw a late block on his teammate Brad Keselowski, Brad would have probably finished, top five at least. But
I think
I
you
mean,
have a point
he's
there.
yeah, no, he is definitely going to be the most chalk in like all tournaments, and that's why it's going to be important to play him in your lines, but also get away from him in his lines because just because he is the best pick on the slate objectively does not mean that he's not going to get wrecked. At some point, a lot of drivers are going to get wrecked, and if he's one of them and you don't have him, that's a chance to make a lot of money.
My next point is that you need to make sure you are differentiating yourself on these slates, especially when you're
Absolutely.
entering these big GPP tournaments. I mean, I know Draftkings themselves they have their regular big GPP, and then FanDuel also has their big $15 entry. So if you're really looking to make a lineup to compete for the top spot in those, you got to make sure you differentiate yourselves, especially if you're building around 10 to more lineups.
Yeah, which I feel like if you are betting on the Daytona 500, you should bet, bet more lineups because the variance here is pretty extreme. Anybody could be optimal
Yep, and then
from the back, especially.
yeah. And then to follow up on that first question, though, Virgil, I have to ask, because we were talking how, especially guys like Brad are going to carry this higher ownership. Who do you think we can look at in this race that'll give us pretty good performance at a not too high of an ownership?
Not too high ownership, and you think that could give us good performance. Well, I think then you have to start looking at drivers that are kind of like higher up in like the mid range. I
Uh,
don't have.
I mean, for me personally, if I had to go one offhand, I'm thinking Kyle Busch today. I mean, as we all know, Kyle is yet to take home a Daytona 500 trophy. And you never know. I mean, he's having his issues with RCR, and he's honestly looked quite terrible as of late. But like we said, this is
No,
this is a race anyone could win. Why not Kyle?
I love the Kyle Busch pick, and I loved him at the duel. I don't know what happened. I think he just got swallowed in traffic, and that's why he's kind of starting back here in this mid range. I feel like he should have had a better duel performance. I mean, he was my pick to win. But going right along with him, another play that's he's just not going to be picked, but could easily get like a top five like Kyle Busch is Chase Elliott for sure.
Chase
17th
Elliott.
place, Chase Elliott. He is he is a talent to the sport. It doesn't matter kind of like where you're going. He can race a super speedway. He can race an oval. He can race a road course. We've seen him have good finishes. If he can avoid wrecks, I think he's an easy candidate for at least a top 10.
No, I think you make a great point there, and I believe a good amount of people are going to be down on him as well, as he did not have his greatest year last year. I think the expectations will be low on him, and I mean, obviously we know what kind of talent level Chase Elliott has, so I would not be surprised to see him come out of this race with a top five finish. Okay, so if there's anyone else that I want to get into, I mean, this is going to be a kind of a group of drivers that I personally would not be against playing in my lineups tonight. Well, tomorrow, but I think we got to go and take a look at the Helio Castroneves of the world, the Carson
Uh,
Postafar, Noah Gragson, the Cole Custer, Josh Berry, Cody
uh,
Ware. Trust me, I know these aren't I guess, the sexiest names, and I would be quite surprised if we see these guys in our lineups too many weeks after this one. But I mean, at these price points, and we know the Carnage is going to be coming up. How many of these guys are you thinking can dodge the big one and pave their way into a winning lineup for you?
Yeah, no, these guys are definitely going to be the make or breakers. I mean, your lines are going to be stacked with all these guys from the back, and I mean, who survives the wreck and who doesn't is going to determine whether or not you make a lot of money with your lines, which is why I recommend making a lot of lines and spreading your variance all over the back. Because I mean, Helio Castroneves, I mean, he could easily get like a top 20. Carson Hocevar, we know he's, really aggressive, starting 33rd. His car didn't look too good in the duels, but I mean, I imagine they're going to get that fixed up. And if you're assuming 15 people at least are going to wreck anyway, I mean, he's a great pick. I mean, all these people starting like 32nd back have a lot of potential. Is there any like particular highlights you were thinking, Josh?
Well, so going through this and looking, I mean, as we look down towards the bottom of the list, we see two legends of the sport. We see our recently quote unquote retired Martin Truex Jr., who checks notes, has not missed a single race since retiring, and and
They should
seven
have just stayed.
and multi-time champion Jimmy Johnson in the back here. Now, for someone like Jimmy, I know he has not had very many good races as of late. I think his age is definitely something that's been catching up to him. But when you look at it like this and you have a multi-time champion starting 40th in the Daytona 500, I mean, the upside is endless.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the 2024 Daytona 500 results too because Jimmy Johnson did qualify for that race as well. Uh, not the greatest performance. He came in at 28th, but he did get caught up in a wreck at the end there. And you figure if he's coming in at 28th and he's starting 40th, that's already like 12 differential points. I mean he's already sitting on like 30 to 35 points. And I mean he could easily do way better than that. I
Oh,
mean
$1,000%.
he's got decent equipment, he's got the experience, and he's definitely competent enough to get it.
No, I agree. And then a few more options that I want to touch on in particular towards the bottom of this list. One of them is going to have to be Ricky Stenhouse Jr., now driving the Hayek Motorsports number 47. Um, I mean, we all know Ricky. We can't trust him anywhere. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. But I think at a track like this, where keep in mind he has won the Daytona 500 before, I think he's definitely a great option to go with and put your money behind. As somehow, even though he wrecks everywhere else, he tends to make it clean here.
Yeah, I mean, clean. I'm sure he's, collected his fair share in the process. But yeah, no, I mean, Ricky Stenhouse is a veteran to, the NASCAR Cup Series and definitely shines when it comes to super speedway races. I mean, we don't really see whole lot of him during the regular season. But if there's one thing he can do, he knows how to draft. He knows how to move in the draft. He knows when to make aggressive moves. Rarely a guy that makes mistakes at tracks like this. So definitely on my radar.
1,000%. And then the last person that I really want to bring up from the back is this guy over here, Justin Haley. Now, as we all know, last year Justin Haley was in his Rick Ware racing equipment. He had an astounding year, especially for the level of equipment that he had, the level of car he had. He was personally for me the surprise of the year, and he put Rick Ware Racing back on the map as a one of the. I mean, I still can't say better, but as one of the teams in the sport that can compete. So Justin Haley here, though, he's made the move to Spire Motorsports, taking over the Corey LaJoy ride, and I really have to say, I think it's gonna be a great move for him. His career, he has a win at a super speedway, even though it was a rain shortened race, but he's done it. I really would be surprised to see if he can't do it again.
Yeah, no, he is absolutely phenomenal at super speedway racing. He's kind of similar to the Ricky Stenhouse situation. Obviously, yeah, he got a huge bump in equipment, so not too sure how he'll be in the regular season races. Interested to see when we get there. But I think there's one other guy from the back that it pains me to say, but I think he deserves a little deliberation between us. How are you feeling about $8,200 DK salary, 38th place Alex Bowman?
really don't know much else has to be said other than we're getting a driver start in 38th, mid price, in a Hendrick Motorsports car. I
Yep. That's the moral of the story. And get this, I just looked at some of his past results from the 2024 season. Let's see. Two top fives, one at Talladega, one at the Daytona 500. Second, he only lost to William Byron, and he got a 16th place finish at the nighttime Daytona race, and he only wrecked out once at Atlanta. So I mean, he's been having some great variance.
just I know you and a few drivers alike have some hate towards our guy Alex Bowman over here, but no, I definitely think he's gonna be a great pick for your lineups, especially with his track record of surviving through these crashes and so, I mean winning the battle of attrition week in and week out. But I mean, like I said, that's a great point. But before we go, I do have to ask you one more question right here. Are there any drivers on here that you would absolutely not play? Like any guys who are anti super speedway, have terrible track records? Anyone that sticks out to you as a fade?
I mean, so the funny thing about this is a lot of the guys that are really good at super speedways are all at the front. They've all pretty much already qualified at the front, save like Ricky Stenhouse, who got into he just got into traffic and he wasn't able to make a push there. But I would say like I'm looking at like third place Bubba Wallace right now. That's an absolute fade. I mean, he is a fantastic like super speedway kind of guy, but I mean, you just can't play him. You cannot play these guys who are starting too far up.
I think their upside's so limited. Even though they're a great super speedway driver, I cannot see them coming around and getting the finish we need to hit value, especially at some
I,
of the prices.
I mean, just look at Chase Briscoe starting on the pole. I mean, he'd have to lead laps and get fastest laps at a track that quite literally limits your speed. Like you just cannot pick pretty much anyone from the top 10. It just wouldn't work. I wouldn't even recommend really going into the top 20. Save maybe like Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch.
No, I have to
But
agree there. For me personally, though, I do have to give out a quick fade as one of the better drivers in NASCAR, but for some reason he cannot, for the life of him, figure out how to super speedway race. I think my top fade on this slate is going to be our guy Kyle Larson over here.
are you
I
going for
mean,
a fade on Kyle Larson, huh?
he wins week after week, and it's definitely intriguing to see a name like that starting back in 22nd position. But the results simply are not there, especially when it comes to super speedway racing. I think Kyle Larson's going to have to be our fade of the week here.
Yeah, he's been pretty subpar throughout the last season. Doesn't look like he got a single top 10. His best finish was an 11th place finish at Daytona, but I mean, there's just so many better picks. I mean, you could even go to like Ryan Blaney, maybe. I mean, if you really wanted somebody up there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Well, I think that wraps it up from us over here at GetRichDFS. I hope you guys enjoyed the first round of our podcast. We're going to be looking to do this accompanying an article pretty much every week for all the races coming up. Trust me, we will hammer down the production value and get this to a much better spot in the future, but we wanted to make sure we can get something out to you guys for the Daytona 500. Virgil, do you
Yep,
have anything to
guys.
add on?
Yeah, I do. Thanks for bearing with us. Obviously, we're new co-hosting of each other, so sometimes, mostly me interrupting my partner by accident. But imagine this: we're like right now, we're like kids on the side of the street selling lemonade, you know. But by the end of this year, we're gonna be a full-on Walmart. This is gonna be the most efficient, best podcast, I think. Period for NASCAR. Do people still do NASCAR podcasts?
I've seen a few, but I think we're trying to restart the industry here, and I think we have a good shot.
Well, God bless us.
Well,
Good night.
again, thank you everyone. Good luck on Xfinity tonight, and great luck for Daytona 500 tomorrow.